Good morning. Welcome to 5 Clubs on Golf Channel. You can also listen to us on the PGA Tour Radio Network. I am Gary Williams. It is a Wednesday morning. It is dreary in Charlotte, North Carolina, but thank you for starting your day with us. We are presented by Century Insurance, right by you. They invest in the game in the best ways. They obviously sponsor the first event on the PGA Tour, as well as their relationship with the United States Golf Association and the First Tee. Of course, Golf Pride. Players at every level trust Golf Pride grips more than any grip globally. Peter Millar, everything I wear for the last 15 years, head to toe, is the apparel leader, Peter Millar, and of course Pinehurst, the cradle of American golf. Can't wait to get there next week to play Pinehurst number 10. All right, this is a Wednesday. You know, last week we had Gil Hanse and Lucas Glover. It's kind of like a Thought Leaders Wednesday. Similar today, Tyler Rae, another guy who likes to play in the dirt, a great young golf architect, is going to join me in studio, talk about his career, about his projects, about the industry, and also George Waters. Speaking of the dirt, he is the editor-in-chief of the green section of the United States Golf Association, but he has written a book that I have consumed, love it, bought it, gave it to friends for the holidays, and I'm looking forward to that conversation with him in a couple of minutes. And speaking of people who are thoughtful, just a couple minutes as we start this Wednesday on the eve of a lot of golf around the world, including another signature series event on the PGA Tour. It has not been a good start to the year for Max Homa. This is somebody who left Rome as kind of the man of the match for the United States in a losing effort. And he's somebody who, just over a year ago at the Masters tournament, found himself in the deep end of the pool with 9 holes to go. It obviously didn't happen for him to win a major championship, and he has been sliding in the wrong direction since. And this year has not gotten off to a great start, and he's made some changes, equipment, apparel, make of that what you want. But he spoke to the media yesterday, and I highly recommend taking the time to listen to what he had to say, because it is as relatable a conversation and him expressing himself of kind of his state of mind. And all of us have a state of mind about our game, regardless of what level you play at. And what he shared was what we all deal with, and particularly those who try to ascend to the thinnest air in golf, and that is the summit, the PGA Tour, the best players, the best fields, the best events. And what it is that doubt and belief are like affirmed in Aladar. In 1978, those two horses raced each other in the Triple Crown Series. So basically over the course of 4 miles, those two horses raced each other neck and neck, doubt and belief. And it's not like Aladar didn't believe, but at the end of each of those races, affirmed won and won the Triple Crown. So over the course of 4 miles, they go neck and neck, and they are separated over those 4 miles by 2 lengths. Doubt and belief run neck and neck. It's true, whatever your vocation is, but in golf, where you go out there in this lonely, solitary pursuit of trying to do things, and you have nothing but time to allow something that is baffling and patient to just sit there, and that is doubt. And so here is Max Homa sharing the fact that last week, he probably hadn't hit it that good in a long, long time, and he missed the cut by 5 shots. And there are a lot of players, most of them who I've talked to over the years, who will tell you that whether it's an event around a shot where they feel like they are 1 shot away from being Tiger in 2000, but in the next moment, they may be 1 shot away from submitting an entry fee via Venmo to the Lone Star Tour. It's an amazing thing. That is why covering this sport has always been so captivating to me. It's not all the other stuff, and the other stuff can be entertaining, but at the end of the day, it's the idea that they all go out there and there's no reliance on anybody else. And that's why, whether it's pro football or baseball or basketball or hockey, and I think that certainly pitchers and quarterbacks, and to a degree, there can be volume shooters that can feel exposed to their own vulnerability because they have the ball in their hands, and if they're not right, it shows. But everybody else can rely on other people to make up for whatever level of doubt they might have. And then they find that confidence again. But the flow state And then the ebbs. Flows are like eclipses. They happen very infrequently. Ebbs in golf are like passing showers. They can pop up at any time and they can persist. And you can think that they're happening all the time. It's kind of like summer in Central Florida, where you know it's going to rain every day. Thank you to Max Homa for sharing what he shared yesterday. And like I said, I highly recommend you listening to what he had to say. And also Joel Beal of Golf Digest wrote a wonderful piece when it was over on the digital side. Go to golfdigest.com and read what he said, him kind of sharing his impression of what he just heard. It was great stuff. Speaking of great, I love books. People who can write kind of astound me. I marvel at the ability of people who have the skill to pen thought. Well, George Waters has written a book called Sand and Golf. He's going to join me next for the first time as we open up the 5 Clubs Book Club. We're going to do this every month throughout this year and in the years we hope going forward. And also Tyler Rae with me in studio, a great young architect designing holes not only here but around the world. He joins me as well on a Wednesday. It's 5 Clubs on Golf Channel, and you can listen to us on the PGA Tour Radio Network on Sirius XM. We're back right after this. Welcome back in. This is the first time we've had the chance to do the book club here on 5 Clubs. I was lucky enough to grow up reading. I was encouraged by a mom who was a literature major, whether it was O.B. Keeler, Bernard Darwin, or Dan Jenkins, you name it. There's so many great people who devoted their careers to writing about golf. And this segment is brought to you by Pinehurst appropriately. There's always a good time. They embody the fact that success is always under construction. Every time I go there, there's something new to enjoy. Looking forward to being back next week playing Pinehurst number 10. Speaking of Pinehurst, coming from nearby in Apex, North Carolina, he is the editor-in-chief of the Green section of the United States Golf Association. You can also call him author, because this book, Sand and Golf, is now available. And I bought it, consumed it, bought additional copies, gave it to friends. They loved it. If you love golf, you will love this book. The author joins me now, George Waters. Good morning, my friend. How are you?
Morning, Gary. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you for doing this. You know, people who have a mind like yours probably have thought about writing a book for a long, long time. This particular book, did part of the impetus of doing this, was it rooted in the fact that sand and golf is at the forefront of the industry of design right now? You consider all that's being done and has been done over the last 10, 15, even go back, maybe even starting with Sandhills, 30 plus years. When did the idea to do this book came into your head?
I got into golf course design and into the whole idea of being a golf course architect reading books myself. I think like a lot of people have. And so I had read the books by George Thomas and Alistair McKenzie, had read Doak's books. And when I was in college, I used to just email or call Tom's office. This was sort of before Pacific Dunes, and say, hey, I want to be a golf course architect. What should I do? And one of the first things he said was, well, you need to go to Scotland and learn about links golf courses. I managed to land myself a job on the maintenance staff at Royal Dornoch, of all places. I emailed every course in Scotland I could think of from Tom's book. Dornoch was the only one that got back, so lucky me. Ended up there for a summer, working with them, really got a chance to immerse myself in links golf, in golf on sandy ground, and began to understand what was different about it. And then I was fortunate to intern with Tom. And at the time, I worked at Yeamans Hall, was the first project I worked on for Tom. Great sandy site in low country at South Carolina. And then went to Barnbougle Dunes in Tasmania and was there sort of from the first day, seeing Tom working on a natural, perfectly sandy dune site. And a lot of things started to click, and then was fortunate to have a lot of conversations with Tom over the years about sandy ground and the difference it made for his architecture. I wrote my master's thesis about golf courses on sandy terrain and how to sort of integrate them with the environment. And by the time I'd finished my thesis and worked on a number of projects with Tom, I had just been sort of writing notes. I had the thesis to build on. And I felt like, after a while that I felt like I had enough that I could write a book. And I was always interested in writing and interested in the literature of golf course architecture. I had a lot of good photos. And so 5 years after that, I kind of had a book.
You know, the subtitle of this book is How Terrain Shapes the Game. And there are a couple things you just said in explaining, kind of how you built the momentum to eventually construct this book. And you said the time at Dornick helped you understand why it was different. What is different about the game of golf where the terrain and the ground are such an integral part of the way the game is played?
I think one of the most important features of sandy sites is the potential for firm conditions, right? It's not a guarantee, but sandy ground tends to drain well. You've got the possibility for good, firm conditions for much more of the year, whether it's been raining or not. But good, firm, fast conditions means that golf becomes sort of a three-dimensional game. It's not just an aerial game of distances and kind of trying to just hit your yardages. It becomes a three-dimensional game where you've got to factor in the bounce and roll of the ball after it lands. It also opens up a lot more options for people to play. I mean, I don't hit the ball very high, for example. I don't hit the ball very far. But I felt like I could play differently and more creatively and more successfully when I was playing links golf than the golf courses I was used to playing back here at home. And so that was really an eye-opener for me of like, wow, when the ball bounces and rolls, that makes everything kind of different. Another factor to sandy sites is that sandy soils tend to be dynamic soils, right? They've arrived where they are. In Dornock, they were blown onto the shore by the wind. They've been carried by wind. They've been moved by water. They're moving soils and they're moving all the time, which means that they tend to get a rumpled kind of character to them. They're not round and smooth. They tend to be kind of wrinkled. And that becomes really interesting when you can integrate that into a golf course design and you've got those firm conditions to where all of a sudden every little bit of stance and lie, every bounce and roll and wrinkle begins to factor in more and more. And so I started to see golf more as that three-dimensional game that's possible on sandy ground. That's not impossible on other types of soil, but it is certainly a lot easier on sandy ground. And then you get those beautiful sort of opportunities for natural hazards, right? You can use the sandy soil underneath to create these sort of interesting bunkers. You get the sort of sandy scrubland along the margins of the holes. It takes work to get that perfect, right? I mean, Pinehurst number 2, all these places are good examples of it. It does take some maintenance and work to get that perfect, but the opportunity exists to have that sort of transition between the playable space and the non-playable space in a way that you just don't get when you've got forest boundaries and you have sort of heavy soils that want to turn muddy, that don't play well. Sandy soils become perfect along the margins of a hole and the vegetation kind of peters out and you get this sort of great, unpredictable sort of surface that's hard to achieve in other kinds of environments.
The book, to me, when I try to explain it to people, it's such a perfect balance of text and illustration with these beautiful photographs. I know it's not accidental. I feel like you nailed it in terms of giving people not only an understanding with your background of, like you said, all those things, the sand and the vegetation and the soils, but also these beautiful photographs that take you through this book from beginning to end. As far as what's happened in the last 30 years, somebody has to be first. Something has to create this momentum. Sand and golf is still ascending because you look at these states like South Carolina and Georgia, and of course you can go out to the coastline of Oregon, and of course Nebraska, and you can go back to England and Australia. But in this country, is it Sandhills and what Corin Crenshaw did there that lit the match?
100%. And when you look back at the first golf book that my dad got me when I was kind of getting interested in the game was Tom Doak's Confidential Guide. And he had written about Sandhills in that book before it was complete and said in his write-up there that he felt like it was being audacious, including as one of his favorite courses, a course that wasn't even finished. And he had these pictures of Sandhills just in the rough and you could see the golf holes sitting right there. And that was really a big turning point. And it was certainly, it confirmed a lot of what people like Tom and Gil Hance had been thinking about architecture and the possibilities there. And all of a sudden, a lot made sense in a couple of ways. Number one, the idea that, hey, sandy ground matters a lot, right? That's something that we had known for a long time in golf, but something that certainly got refreshed by Sandhills. And then the other really important element of Sandhills, I think, is the idea that site suitability matters to the point that people will be willing to travel great distances to unusual places in order to enjoy these great sites when you can put it all together like that. Now, that was true of the links courses of Scotland, right? I mean, places like Royal Dornoch, places like St. Andrews were remote. North Berwick were remote when they were built. I mean, these were not just kind of right on the way to anywhere. And people were willing to travel to them because they were special for golf, because they had these special situations. The same was true of Sandhills, just in a very different context. And then all of a sudden, people started to look for the right sites, right? It was, hey, we want sand. We want the good site. We want the good property. We're prepared to go find it. And we believe that people will come and enjoy it. And then all of a sudden, that opens a lot of doors, right? The sandy ground doesn't need to be right next to town. It can be in Bandon, Oregon. It can be in, central Wisconsin. It can be in central Florida. And people are willing to go if the golf course and the golf design is right.
How can people get the book? Because like I said, if you're watching this show, if you watch this network, you're invested in golf in a significant way. How do people get the book?
The easiest and best way to get it is to reach out to me directly via social media. I'm at GWatersGolf on Twitter, on Instagram. Shoot me a message. That way I can sign it for you. That way we can trade some thoughts a little bit about golf on sandy ground. It's also available on Amazon, anywhere else that you get books.
I'm going to read your words to you to end this, and it's at the end of the book. Golf on sandy terrain is about more than the courses themselves. It's about the values and challenges that have drawn people to the game for centuries. I don't know how long you thought about that, but I can't think of a better way to put a bow on a book about the subject matter that you tackled. Congratulations.
Thanks so much, and thanks so much for having me today.
That is George Waters. He's the editor-in-chief of the Green section of the USGA and the author, again, of Sand and Golf, How Terrain Shapes the Game. It is a fantastic book. It's a book you need to possess if you love golf. We're going to take a break. We continue with you. Tyler Rae, he knows about sand and golf. He is an architect and a leader and being entrusted on some of the great properties in America, including one in Central Florida that I'm going to talk to him about, and a new one he's doing in the state of South Carolina. We continue with you. Plus, we open up the club on a Wednesday morning. We're back right after this. Back in on a Wednesday. It is 5 Clubs on Golf Channel, and this segment is brought to you by Peter Millar. They are, for the last 20 years, their commitment to luxury and style is unmatched, and I have been very proud for the last 15 years to be an ambassador for Peter Millar. Everything, head to toe. I mean, I could show you my shoes. I might as well. I mean, come on. That's Peter Millar right there. Head to toe. I'm not just saying it, I'm living it. So proud to have them with us. We do this every Wednesday, and that is Club 5, and it's kind of a combination of a power ranking / heat index. So why don't we go ahead and on a Wednesday, somewhere the club is open. So we open it up this week. And Hideki Matsuyama is going to stay in the club off of the win at the Century. He hadn't missed a cut yet this year. Tied for 25th at Phoenix, where he's got a great record. He's been going in the wrong direction. If he does not have a good week, I got a feeling that he will not get entry next week. Making his way in for the first time into the club is Thomas Dietrich, and it's not just the fact that he won by 7 in a very good field, and he wins for the first time, but it's not just that. The fact is that he's lived inside the top 15 this season, including a 5th at the Century, which is a short field, but a deep field. So Thomas Dietrich rightfully into Club 5. Meanwhile, at number 3, Sepp Straka. Speaking of a guy who just is in the top 15, that's all he's done this season. He wins the Amex. He was the 54-hole leader at Pebble Beach, winds up finishing tied for 7th there. Solid week. At the at the WM Phoenix Open. So Sepp Straka stays rightfully, I believe, in the club. Meanwhile, at number 2, it's Rory McIlroy. Didn't play last week in Phoenix, but such an impressive, thorough victory that he had at Pebble Beach. You add to that the tie for 4th in Dubai. So he's number 2. And I got a feeling people might be thinking he could double down and win this week. We'll get to that in a moment. And meanwhile, at number 1, we're giving him, look, when you have VIP, it seems like entry into the club in perpetuity. You got to give Scottie Scheffler a little grace. He had the tie for 9th at Pebble Beach, his first event of the year off of the injury around the holidays. And then he had kind of a sluggish weekend and had a bad inward 9 on Sunday. So you're going, come on, really? He's still number 1? Come on. He was so entrenched that I've got to give him, like I said, some grace. But I think it's game on for him to hold that position this week at what is the Genesis being played at Torrey Pines. So that is the club. So we transitioned from the club to our picks on a Wednesday. And this has been through the month of January and now into what is the middle of February, been a really unimpressive pillow fight with the staff here and the contributors of 5 clubs. But we have an event that is a signature series event, so we know that the earnings are going to be affected. There is no cut. There is a cut here because it's Tiger's event, Tiger Jack, Arnold's events have that modest cut. Not many players are not going to play the weekend. Gil Hanse, a very, very ordinary beginning to the year. Johnson Wagner, Brendan, Taylor, Jay, myself, Emma Carpenter stays out in front overall. Nobody has picked a winner yet this year. And I will say this, that picking winners in golf, being presumptuous about professional golf is like jaywalking with a blindfold on. It's just such a dangerous proposition, but we frivolously do it here every single week. And with that, here are our picks for the week in the Genesis. And you know what we have in play? It's called the idiot trifecta. 3 or more pick the same player, they are doomed to fail. Now, I would ride 2 with Rory, as Johnson Wagner, Jay Billis, and Taylor Zarza are doing. I get it. Emma Carpenter, she plays Jordan Spieth, interestingly enough. Gil Hanse goes with Scheffler. Morikawa, I couldn't play him. That would be the 3rd time I would play him. I'm going with Taylor Pendrith. His ball striking has been outstanding. He would be 2nd behind Scheffler in terms of tee to green, strokes gained off the tee, and his approach play. He's 13th or better in 3 or 4 starts at Torrey Pines. He was 7th at the Farmers Insurance Open. So you can say that's a little bit of off the map. Taylor Pendrith is a guy who, again, his overall results have been great. Tee to green is great, which is paramount at a place like Torrey Pines, the South Course. So those are our selections for the week here at 5 clubs. All right, we take a break. When we come back, Tyler Rae is going to join me in studio. Gil Hanse said it a week ago today that the next generation of great architects and designers are upon us. And he mentioned Tyler Rae by name. He joins me. We talk about his work, where the industry is, and a project that he has the responsibility for as soon as the event on the PGA Tour ends this year to get it ready for next year. Continue with you right here at the bottom of the hour. It is 5 clubs on Golf Channel and the PGA Tour Radio Network on Sirius XM. We're back right after this. Welcome back into 5 clubs on this Wednesday morning. This segment is brought to you by this company, Golf Pride. There is no grip trusted more by players at every level, and this specific grip, you can get it now. The Align Max, I've had it for a couple months. Harris English had him on his clubs a couple weeks ago when he won the Farmers Insurance Open. They are the most trusted grip in golf. All right, speaking of trust, when you turn your property, historic properties, over to somebody to say, please bring it back to what it was. I can't think of anything more daunting and also something that could humble you more than being told, I get to do this. Well, this person who's joining me now in studio is doing just that, not to mention original work as well. As I said, Gil Hanse has said it last week on this program, the next generation of great designers is upon us, and they are getting commissioned all over this country to build great work. Tyler Rae is one of them. He joins me now. Good morning.
Thank you so much, Gary. Appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Well, look, thanks for making the time to be here. You guys are jumping all over the place, but you're used to it. You've played over 2,000 golf courses all over the world, as you have. I think it's great to be able to say it's research, honey, as you probably have it at portions of your life with your wife. Let me start at the beginning. Look, the intelligentsia of people who love golf are very familiar with who you are and your work. But for people who are not, you head off to Kentucky to play golf collegiately. Were you already thinking, did you already have this curiosity of the land because you were a landscape architecture major? You clearly were taken by what you were seeing in addition to what you were trying to do by putting a score in a box at what, 12, 14, 16?
Yep, correct.
Is that right?
Oh yeah. Starting, junior golf and playing the varied courses in Philadelphia. Growing up in Philadelphia, playing Marion and Ronamink, Pine Valley. The best of the best. That opened up my eyes.
Yeah. So you go off to Kentucky, and you were just saying to me, look, J.B. Holmes is there. You guys won the SEC. The pool was deep in terms of guys who can play. Did you already think as an undergraduate that you wanted your future to be in the design industry?
Well, it really wasn't until October of freshman year, and I sat down with Coach Brian Craig, who just retired, gosh, I think in the last year or two. And he said, Tyler, bring in your last 20 tournament scores and we'll look at this and sit down and have a hard talk. So I go into the stadium where his office was located. We hang out, we talk for about 2 hours, and he goes, Tyler, I think you should pursue landscape architecture because the team is so deep. The SEC is very, rigorous. These guys are all going on tour or trying to go on tour. And so he looked at my game and said, hey, I think you should, maybe do a little something else. So then I went right into landscape architecture and focused on golf course design after that. And so it was really Brian Craig who, we text or email from time to time, and he's so kind. But he kind of gave me the necessary nudge out of golf.
Yeah. It's an amazing time, and we're all blessed if we play golf to have all these places, whether it's high-end retail and what Bandon has done, and Dream Golf as a company and their vision for what they're doing in places like Bandon and Sand Valley, and we've got Rodeo Dunes that's going to be coming online, and East Texas and Florida, not to mention the Cabot properties, but also these original works that you're being commissioned to do. You've got a place north of Charleston that you're working on now, Old Sawmill. That property, the state of South Carolina, why is all this happening?
Well, I guess, there's this sort of golf boom. Golf is hot again. After the pandemic, I feel like, people, looked at their lives and said, what do we, hey, we need to stop working so much. Maybe we need to play a little more golf, have a little more fun. And so, I think there's been a resurrection with new golf courses, and then obviously restorations. They've been hot for a long time, but people, the rich have gotten richer, and people said, hey, I want my own golf course now, and it's pretty interesting to see. Everybody's looking at property, everybody's wanting to maximize their life, maybe the pandemic or COVID, maybe it had everybody kind of look back and say, life is so short. Let's take the gamble. Let's build a new course. Yeah. And we're seeing a lot of that.
We are. You were mentioning to me, look, these statistics from the National Golf Foundation, and they become a little bit more pragmatic with the way that they look at defining participation, which I totally support. Mm-hmm. If you do anything that is remotely like, if you have a club in your hand, you're taking time to think about golf, hit a golf shot. But it's not just the super high-end private enclaves. At all levels, we're seeing participation and the demographics going from, it's an old guy's sport to younger. Why do you think that's happening?
Well, I know the female side of the sport has jumped out of the water. It's something like 27% of all golfers in America are female, which is the highest it's ever been, obviously, and tons of juniors coming in. And I think it's the family aspect helps. I mean, all the country clubs we're working at, we're being asked to look more judiciously at the forward tees, for juniors, for obviously seniors later in life, and then for the female golfer. And, I guess more of the family aspect, people are valuing their time a little more. So, hey, let's not work crazy work weeks. Let's, like your show here, what do? 3 days a week, right? And then we try to, spend a little more time playing golf maybe or traveling.
Right.
And so I think people are just saying, hey, let's enjoy golf. Let's get into this sport. And you can't tear an ACL or rip up your knee or hip, like some of these other sports, pickleball, paddle, tennis. Some are rougher on the body. Where golf is, you can play it your whole life. You can have a cocktail if you want, you know,
Right.
and enjoy it. So
Yeah, the orthopedic surgeons, they look at pickleball and go, thank you,
Yes.
because their businesses are booming. Your influences, look, where you grow up in the state of Delaware, you're in such close proximity to some of the greatest things that have ever been achieved in golf. You mentioned Pine Valley. It was an amalgam of mind and thought with the founder and people who he appealed to. But the likes of William Flynn and Donald Ross and A.W. Tillinghast and Seth Rayner, all of them. Let me start with Ross, who again, you're going to work on something we'll talk about as it relates to the PGA Tour soon enough. Ross, if you could define his contribution and just an overall vision, how would you?
Well, I guess his overall contribution would be he brought golf to the masses, and then he created Pinehurst, which is the St. Andrews of America, which is the Mecca in America of golf. And so I think the St. Andrews and Pinehurst connection, and then obviously he built 423 courses that we know of at the moment,
Right.
and we find another one or two each year through newspaper articles and all of that. But, you know, I think bringing it to the masses in really great routings that everybody could enjoy. The golf course wasn't too penal. The bunkers weren't 10 feet deep everywhere. Open approaches so you could run the ball in. So all classes of golfers enjoyed it. And then I think when they played a well-routed Donald Ross golf course, people said, wow, this is really solid. This is fun. We enjoy it. And his career obviously took off. And he, I think, transcended the sport as one of the pioneers.
There's no doubt he was. And to me, I feel like he's not undermined, but there's something about maybe the fact that he was so prolific that there is an undercurrent of underappreciation, I honestly think, for him, whereas Mackenzie Rayner, gone too soon, not nearly as prolific, so there was something mythical about them. Do you agree with that? That's just my viewpoint.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. They lived, even Tillinghast had a shorter, you know, work span. And so Ross, he emigrated in 1899 and then worked all the way up until his death in 1948. So 49 years, 50 years basically of golf work. And before that, he worked at Carnoustie, the old course with old Tom Morris, and at Dornoch. So he worked on 3 courses in Scotland before emigrating in 1899. So yeah, probably, I mean, his hand, his thumbprint or imprint on the game is legendary and greater than most.
Yes. So. I want to ask you about Seth Rayner because speaking of being entrusted, Lookout Mountain, I was lucky enough to go there last fall and play it. I hadn't played it formally, didn't need to be totally enthralled by the experience. Again, somebody who was the original designer at Cypress Point, and then he dies, and then the chain of events that I think changes golf, the industry, your industry, profoundly because it becomes Alister MacKenzie. Seth Rayner is aligned with C.B. Macdonald. What is Seth Rayner's greatest gift to golf?
Probably his boldness. He took the C.B. Macdonald, National Golf Links kind of templates, and then really maximized the scale. And so what we see at Camargo, Chicago Golf Club, Fisher's Island,
yes.
Some of these, the bunkers, the greenside bunkers are 15 feet deep, and we don't really see that at National Golf Links. So I think he took CB's kind of style, and CB obviously taught him everything he could, and instilled in Seth everything. And Seth was probably a sponge. And but we see just bold scale, big daunting green pads, kind of that architecture that beats you before you hit the shot mentally.
Yes.
Because you stand over the shot and you go, wow, this is hard, or this looks scary. But in essence, the scale, the fairways are bigger. The greens are bigger. The corridors are bigger, so your miss, you have a little more room, but it looks scary. And that's a really cool form of architecture.
No question. We're going to talk about another Ross design that you've been entrusted to work on. And it's not like you have several years to get it done. You have a very specific timeline, and it's related to the PGA Tour. We'll talk about that with Tyler Rae, who's with me on this Wednesday. And oh, by the way, we're going to do an after hours that will be for the YouTube channel, going deep on his experiences around the world. We're back with him on 5 Clubs right after this. Welcome back in on this Wednesday to 5 Clubs on Golf Channel. You can also listen to us on the PGA Tour Radio Network on Sirius XM. Very pleased to have Tyler Rae, one of the great young golf course architects in the game, with me in studio. And as it relates to the PGA Tour, let's talk about something that you're going to have an impact on the tour. Your team has been entrusted after the Rocket Mortgage to go in and do some extensive work at Detroit Golf Club. This is a place that, look, it's a newer stop as it relates to, the PGA Tour. And it's a golf course that has wonderful history, not just the golf course itself, but the club itself. How can you do what you're getting ready to do? Because Gil has been asked to do it at Colonial. Andrew Green was asked to do it at Eastlake. How do you do what you're getting ready to do when they literally put the last putt is wrapped in on a Sunday, hopefully? Your team has said, you got 12 months less than to get this right. How do you do that?
It's going to be all hands on deck and very intense. The tightest project timeline of our career. Luckily, we've slowly built our team. We have about 15 employees now, and a bunch of really talented shapers. A bunch of Jim Ryan Jr., Tim Lewis, Matt Fauerbach, Tim Furness. We have an incredible stable right now because I can't do it all on my own. And just like Gil and some of these other architects, Bill Core, Ben Crenshaw, Tom Doak, they have phenomenal team members. And so I've tried the last 3 or 4 years to really surround myself and build a really great company, obviously. Then we can service the clients. And so this job, Detroit, it's going to be very condensed. We're going to be out there a lot. I'll be there probably 3 days a week. And it is going to be just all hands on deck.
Yeah. What are the priorities when you go to their board or membership, whoever it is that's making the decision as to who's going to do this work? What did you prioritize to them that they said, you're right, that's what we have to do? What are the priorities at Detroit Golf Club?
Great question, Gary. It's infrastructure driven. So most of these projects in America are infrastructure driven, meaning drainage, irrigation, greens rebuild. Things aren't, the bunkers are kind of past their life expectancy. And so most of these clubs call and it's, hey, we need new irrigation, or hey, our golf course isn't draining anymore. So for Detroit, it was their greens weren't draining anymore. And the PGA Tour had a lot of trepidation about, if we get in a tournament, we have a 2-inch rain Friday night. These are going to be sponges and very soft, maybe almost unplayable on Saturday. Mm-hmm. And so we were tasked by the club, by the board, to obviously improve all the infrastructure, rebuild the greens, bunkers, tees, add miles of drainage in the fairways, and then all new state-of-the-art irrigation, HDPE, like a 50-year system. So it's a major undertaking, but it'll be great for the future.
How much will you spend the week of the Rocket Mortgage this week listening to the thoughts of tour players, people who play this golf course on a regular basis and go back there every year? How important is their feedback?
Wow, that is a very tough question because it's the members' golf course.
Yes, there's no doubt.
It's 1 week a year, unfortunately. Yeah. The PGA Tour is there, and so we listen, and we have champ tees back at 7,600 yards.
Right.
So it's a beastly golf course, and so we will obviously pull back tees, strategically place bunkers where they fit in the landforms, but really we're designing it for the members. So we're actually going to have more open approaches, more of that Donald Ross flavor. Beautifully wrinkled greens, but not over the top. I mean, we will be so thoughtful and spend so much time on the putting surfaces, trying to get those right, but I don't want them flat. just because they have a tour event. So I don't want them 2%, 1% everywhere. They will still have some flair and some corners and some beautiful shapes, that old world Donald Ross feel. So our goal is to make it look antiquated, like it's from 1920.
Sure.
And but play to the modern game. So it's a fine line we will tiptoe. But probably, to answer your question in a long, circuitous manner, probably I'll listen to them about 10%,
yeah.
And then it's 90% members golf course, because they are going to have it for the next 50 years. And we don't know how long the tournament will be there, hopefully for a long time, but you just never know.
Right. I'm hitting you cold with this, and I know you're not out straw polling your peers in the design industry. Where do you think your group falls with relationship to the whole rollback proposal, the thing that's hanging out there for the elite game in 28 and the recreational game in 30? Where do you think you guys fall?
I love it. I think all golf course architects hopefully love it, because land is so sparse, and we are striving and reaching for every morsel on these properties. Like Detroit, I mean, we are stuffing tees back there.
I don't know how you're finding 76.
It's really difficult. It makes our job immensely harder. And so I love the rollback. Gosh, it'd be great to see 290-yard drives again instead of 340 and 360. So we're big fans, and I think everybody else is, hopefully, in our realm. All
right, we're going to take a break. Again, we're doing an after hours, so we got much more to get to with him, but he is going to sit in the final segment of the week, and I know that he will like this because everybody in his industry loves dogs. Dogs of the Week, coming up next right here on 5 Clubs. All right, if you want to send in your dogs, we want them. Dogs at 5clubsgolf.com. All right, and we're getting so many. We're trying to get in as many as we can. Tyler is sitting here with me. He knows how prevalent dogs are at properties. Most superintendents have dogs. Speaking of which, we've got a little theme here as we get to our Dogs of the Week. Apogee, which is this spectacular property in Martin County, Florida. That is Tony Nicey, and that is he's the director of agronomy. That's his dog, Charlie. And then the next one, that is Duke on the left. That is A.J. Leonard's dog, the West Course assistant superintendent. Nellie, Adam Hughes' dog on the right. And then that is Pierce. That is Trevor Freed's dog, the assistant equipment manager on the left. And then Cash, Chris Rooney's dog on the right. Now, let's go out to Sweetens Cove. John Reif, the head golf professional, that is his dog, Finnegan. Of course, they've got a glorious dog at Sweetens Cove. Bob Alliston from Clear Creek Tahoe Golf Course. That is Duke, a Bernese mountain dog. He's 4 years of age. And then finally, that is Lukai, who's a big fan of Colin Morikawa or Colin's head cover. Can't tell which. I'm thinking it's the head cover. Thank you to Anthony Schifano, who sent that in. Again, our email, dogs@5clubsgolf.com. You've had dogs probably on all your sites and all your projects, haven't you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's very prevalent.
Okay. And we've got a minute left here. What you're doing at Old Sawmill, north of Charleston, the state of South Carolina, it's like the lineup for the 27 Yankees, what is happening in the state. Quickly, what are people going to get with Old Sawmill?
Kind of like Seth, Rayner, Ross, big scale. Big, bold greens, fill pads where the greens sit, the putting surfaces. We're trying to have a beautiful routing that, embraces nature. And so a gorgeous walk, short green to tee walks. You can play loops of 6 holes, 8 holes, 9 holes, 12 holes. So very intricate routing. I mean, we spent a year almost on the routing.
Yeah.
And so we're very proud of that. Some fall offs, some beautiful fall offs, some deep bunkering, but old classic golden age feel.
Yeah.
But a player's club.
Well, you mentioned Rayner. You're probably not far from as the crow flies from Yeaman's Hall. I appreciate you being here. We're going to have a special show. We're going deep on his career and all the places in this country that he loves most when it comes to playing golf. Hope you play some golf. We're back on Monday with another week of 5 Clubs. Have a great rest of your week.